أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد والثناء لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا القاسم المصطفى محمد. وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين المنتجبين، لا سيما بقية الله في العالمين، روحي وأرواح العالمين الأبرار الدم والسلام. ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. اللهم كل وليك المجتهد الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة، وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. For the hastening and return of our Imam, please recite the salawat. As you remember, last night we tried to talk a little bit about what to do in this holy and blessed month of Ramadan, keeping in mind the importance of this month. Being in the month that is considered the best of the months of the year. As we know, one night, only one night of this month is considered better than 1,000 months. So what should we do in this month? Last night we discussed the most important thing that we need to do, which, again, according to the khutbah of the Holy Prophets that I was giving you portions of, at the end, after the Holy Prophet explains everything, interestingly, Amirul Mu'mineen sallallahu alayhi stands up and asks the question. He asks, so what's the best thing to do in this month? And the Holy Prophet responds, al-wara' an maharim al-Allah. Being extra cautious, extra careful about committing sins in this glorious month. That was the most important thing. And we used the verse that discusses the obligation of fast in the Holy Quran to come to this point, and the hadith really have seen about it. Another thing that we find in the verses of the Holy Quran in regards to the concept of fasting and this practice that we have is a verse that we find amongst the verses of fasting. The one that I recited last night, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. That was the beginning verse. If you check the current prints that we have of the Holy Quran, this discussion of fasting goes on to the following page as well. You have the last verse in the next page. In between these verses, we have a verse that was very beautifully recited before I came up here. And that is the verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عبادي عني فإني قريب. This is one of the very beautiful verses of the Holy Quran. Obviously all the verses are beautiful, but their beauty is from different aspects. This one is one of those touchy verses. Okay, it tries to, let me explain a little bit because we don't have too much time here. See the way the verse begins. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all of the verses is addressing the Holy Prophet, right? He addresses the people, all of mankind, through the Holy Prophet. Now this verse, sometimes the wording of the verses is such that it's addressing directly the believers. Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, for example. Ya ayyuhan nas, in other verses. That's the language. Sometimes it begins by addressing the Prophet, and O Prophet, do this, or say this. For example, the verses that begin with Qul, the 4 surahs that we have that begin with Qul, tell them, say. Now that address is directly addressing the Holy Prophet. Tell the others something. Okay. Now, this verse begins in this way. Allah addresses the Holy Prophet. O Prophet, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي. He's considering us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is considering us, the people, those that are not being addressed right now. I'm not talking to you people right now. I'm talking to my Prophet. If my servants ask you about me, then it changes the tone. The verse changes the tone. It doesn't say, tell them, قُلْ لَهُمْ إِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. It goes directly as though he's addressing the Prophet, then he wants to address us on a more personal note. He turns to the masses, to all people, فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. And a lot of times the verses, you see, for example, in Surah Al-Qadr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr. We, there's a concept of we. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks in the Holy Quran, and sometimes it's I instead of we. When it becomes I, there's different reasons, but in this particular case, فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. There's a lot of emphasis about, he wants to tell us, look, I'm very close to you. I am very close. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. I'm very close. What's that leading to? أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. I answer the call and the request of those, or when people ask. Now a side note. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes in many of the verses of the Holy Quran, He is near. There's no distance between Him and His creation. We create a barrier between ourselves and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that barrier is from our side, not from the other side. God is still near. We're the ones that are distant. In Dua Abu Hamza Somali, which is one of the greatest of supplications, what it says is this, that you have not covered yourself from your creation. It is our actions that have covered us. We can't see you because of our actions. Now that's a side point. Maybe in the following that we'll expand on a little more. But for now, this verse is expressing the importance of dua. Right in the middle of the verses that talk about fasting, we have the concept of dua and supplication. I want to take a little bit of time tonight to talk about this aspect of the holy month of Ramadan. Let's compare what we just read in the verse where it said, أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. Whenever you call upon me, I am going to answer your call. I'm going to answer your call. Then we look at the khutbah of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says about this particular month, the verse says anytime, if you call upon Allah, Allah is near, He's going to answer you. in the dua, or in the sermon of the Holy Prophet, he says, وَدُعَاءُكُمْ فِيهِ مُسْتَجَابٌ. There's a special month of the year that all you believers, whenever you make a dua, whenever you supplicate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever problems you're facing, if you're facing financial problems, if you're facing problems in practicing your religion, if you want to get nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you want that help, if you ask in this month, your dua and your supplication is going to be responded to. There's a little bit of contrast there, which I'll spend a couple of minutes on. The verse said, anytime you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but this one says this is a characteristic and a feature of this holy month that your prayers are answered. The reason has to do with the way the verse is, إِذَا دَعَانِ. The verse says, إِذَا دَعَانِ, which in reality, there's a grammatical point here. It would have been إِذَا دَعَانِ, that ya has been omitted. It says إِذَا دَعَانِ. If you ask me, I will give you. I will answer you. We can go on for hours talking about this. Is our request, our dua, really asking God? Are we really asking Him or not? There's an extensive discussion on it. And that is the explanation, one of the explanations of why the calls are not going to be answered. The du'as are not going to be answered. When we commit sins, one of the explanations, when we commit sins, then that call that is supposed to be going to God, it is going to be blocked. That action of ours is going to block it. That sin of ours blocks that. We're saying it, but our own action blocks it. I want this, but no, I don't want it. Without even realizing. Now what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does out of His mercy is that He puts certain times of the year and the day that during these times, with all of the misdeeds that we have done, He still hears those calls. And that's what this sermon of the Holy Prophet is saying. In this month, although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ, I will only accept and I will only respond to the muttaqeen, those who have developed the spirit of taqwa. They don't commit sins any longer. I will only accept from them. However, during this month, I will give you barakah. Although you're not muttaqeen, I will accept your calls. I will hear them. So this is a very special month of dua and supplication. There's two aspects generally of dua. There's a dua that is called supplicating and requesting. When you feel like you need something and you request for it, that is a form of dua. Then we have another form of dua that we kind of call reading or reciting dua. We recite dua al-Kumayn. When we recite dua al-Iftitah, if you recite dua Abu Hamza al-Thumali, we call that recitation of the dua, not the dua itself. There's a reason behind that. We'll try to discuss that. First, I want to talk a little bit about